In the autumn of 1955, an unmarked package arrived at the Office of Naval Research in Washington, D.C. Inside was a book that would ignite one of the strangest legends of the Second World War. The book was a newly published work titled The Case for the UFO, written by an astronomer and ufologist named Morris K. Jessup. Its margins were crammed with handwritten notes in 3 different colors of ink. The notes were elaborate, filled with technical jargon, and written as if by someone with intimate knowledge of a secret naval project. The writer identified himself as Carl M. Allen, though he would later use the name Carlos Miguel Allende. What Allen described in those margins was an experiment so bizarre, so far outside the boundaries of known science, that it would capture the imagination of generations. He claimed that in 1943, the U.S. Navy had rendered a destroyer escort, the USS Eldridge, entirely invisible. And the consequences were far stranger than anyone could have anticipated. The mystery did not begin with a single, clear account. It began with a set of contradictions buried in the margins of a book. And the deeper investigators looked, the more the story seemed to shift between truth, hopes, and something deliberately designed to confuse. We have to go back to the annotations themselves to understand how this unfolded. Allen wrote that the experiment was based on a unified field theory developed by Albert Einstein. He claimed the theory was incomplete, but that the Navy had pushed forward regardless. The purpose was to make a warship undetectable to enemy eyes and radar, an enormous tactical advantage in the middle of a global war. According to Allen, the test took place at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard on or around October 28, 1943. What happened during that test was described in the margins in fragments, each note adding another layer of horror. At first, the ship was enveloped in a greenish fog. Then it vanished completely from view. Some notes said the Eldridge had not just become invisible, but had been physically transported to Norfolk, Virginia, and back, a distance of more than 200 miles in a matter of minutes. But the most disturbing claims involved the crew. Some sailors, Allen wrote, were found embedded in the ship's bulkheads after the field collapsed. Others were driven insane, while still others simply disappeared and never returned. He added that the surviving personnel had been discharged as mentally unfit and that a massive cover-up had sealed all records. At first, the book and its strange margins were seen only by a few officers. Then, early in 1956, the Office of Naval Research invited Jessup himself to Washington. They showed him a new edition of his own book, printed privately by a company called Varro Manufacturing in Garland, Texas, that reproduced the annotations in full. Jessup was stunned. He had no idea who Allen was or how the notes had ended up with the military. He was told that the Navy was curious about the contents, but the meeting only deepened the mystery. Shortly after, Jessup was found dead in his car in a Florida park, the victim of apparent carbon monoxide poisoning. His death was ruled a suicide, but the timing seemed, to many, deeply suspicious. The question now was whether there was any truth behind Allen's story. If there was, it would mean the U.S. Navy had secretly developed technology decades ahead of its time and then buried the knowledge along with the bodies of its victims. Investigators had to start from scratch, separating rumor from record. And the first thing they did was look for the Eldridge. The USS Eldridge was a real ship, a Cannon-class destroyer escort commissioned in August 1943 at the New York Navy Yard. By all official accounts, she spent that autumn in New York, running sea trials and training, not in Philadelphia. War diaries, deck logs, and the ship's movement reports, all held by the National Archives, show her location day by day. On October 28, 1943, the Eldridge was in New York Harbor, not at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard. She did not enter Philadelphia until the following September, nearly a year later, for a fitting out availability after her service as a convoy escort in the Mediterranean. The logs also reveal that the Eldridge sailed from New York on November 1, 1943, as part of convoy UGS-23 heading to Casablanca. There is no gap in the records, no missing day that could hide a secret voyage or a teleportation event. The Navy's official position is unambiguous. The Eldridge was never in Philadelphia at the time of the supposed experiment, and no such test was ever conducted. But if the logs are so clear, how did Allen's story arise? The search for his identity turned up more than just a name. Carl Meredith Allen was a real person, a merchant mariner with a long history of mental instability and a penchant for writing long, rambling letters about fantastic inventions and conspiracies. He was born in 1925 and, by his own admission, spent time in and out of psychiatric institutions. Interviews with his family and acquaintances paint a picture of a brilliant but troubled man, someone who could absorb technical details and weave them into elaborate fictions. Allen did not simply write margin notes and disappear. Throughout 1956, he sent a series of letters directly to Morris Jessup, expanding his claims. In one, he described standing on the deck of another vessel during the test and witnessing the Eldridge disappear. In another, he introduced the idea that the experiment had torn a hole in the fabric of time and that the ship had briefly traveled into the future. He also began referencing classified materials, supposedly a report on the experiment that he had seen aboard a merchant ship. But these letters were full of contradictions. Dates shifted, ship names changed, and the nature of the phenomenon transformed from invisibility to teleportation to time travel. What makes the investigation even more difficult is that Allen's account has spawned multiple versions of the story, each one departing further from the original. In some retellings, the experiment involved Tesla coils and massive electrical generators. In others, Einstein himself was present, supervising a project to apply his incomplete field equations. There is no evidence to support any of these details. Einstein's papers show no involvement with naval invisibility projects, and the physics Allen cited bears only a distorted resemblance to actual theories of the time. The Navy, for its part, has addressed the Philadelphia experiment directly. Its online research library states that the story is a hoax, that the scientific basis is non-existent, and that the Eldridge's locations are well documented. It also notes that the Office of Naval Research's brief interest in the annotated book was nothing more than curiosity about a bizarre piece of mail. Nobody in 1955 took it as evidence of a real experiment. Yet the endurance of the legend suggests that the simple debunking is not the whole story. Something about the Philadelphia experiment has made it impossible to dismiss entirely, even after decades of factual rebuttals. This persistence is itself part of the investigation. Why would a single person's marginal notes capture the world's attention so completely? One explanation is that the story touched on a very real wartime anxiety, the race to develop technological miracles. In 1943, the Manhattan Project was underway in total secrecy, and rumors of incredible weapons filtered through the ranks. The idea of a degaussing process to reduce magnetic fields, developed to counter magnetic mines, was real. Sailors might have noticed strange cables and equipment around ships and speculated about invisibility. In Philadelphia, the Navy Yard was a hive of activity, where new technologies were constantly being tested. It is possible that Allen, during his time as a merchant mariner, absorbed fragments of scuttlebutt and garbled them into his narrative. Another thread in the investigation concerns the Varro Manufacturing edition of Jessup's book. It has been claimed that the Office of Naval Research itself produced this edition, peddled to researchers as a way to test public reaction. If true, it would suggest an interest in the story at some level, if only to discredit it or to track UFO enthusiasts. But the simplest explanation, supported by the historical record, is that two employees at Varro, excited by the annotations, produced the copies without authorization. The Navy then took possession of a few, leading to the meeting with Jessup. Carl Allen's behavior after the letters adds another layer. He eventually retracted portions of his story, claiming that he had exaggerated and that the experiment was a hoax, though he later recanted the retraction. This pattern of confession and withdrawal is characteristic of a serial fabricator, but it also leaves the door open for those who want to believe that he was coerced into silence. The cultural impact of the Philadelphia experiment has long since outpaced the facts. The story inspired a 1984 film, The Philadelphia Experiment, in which two sailors are hurled through time into the 1980s. It has become a staple of conspiracy literature, appearing in books, documentaries, and online forums as proof of suppressed technology. But each retelling adds new layers that obscure the original. The movie, for example, introduced a concrete time travel narrative that had only been hinted at in Allende's writings. Over time, the legend has become a kind of historical palimpsest, with each generation adding its own fears and fascinations. So where does the evidence ultimately lead? The ship's logs place the Eldridge far from Philadelphia on the date in question. The physics that supposedly made it possible has no basis in theory or experiment. The sole witness, Carl Allen, had a documented history of mental health issues and a pattern of inventing elaborate fantasies. The Navy's interest was brief and explicitly curious, not conspiratorial. Even Allen himself admitted to hoaxing, then took it back, then admitted it again. The evidentiary foundation beneath the Philadelphia experiment is, in the cold light of investigation, almost non-existent. And yet the mystery does not quite dissolve. Why did the Office of Naval Research bother to meet with Jessup? Why did the Varro edition exist in the first place? Why did the Varro edition exist in the first place? Why does the story continue to be told, even by people who know the facts? The answer may have less to do with World War II than with our own need for the unexplained. The Philadelphia experiment, whether hoax or persistent rumor, serves as a kind of modern folklore, a story about the dangers of unchecked science and the terrifying power of secrets locked inside military bunkers. The case of the USS Eldridge remains an open file, not because the evidence is ambiguous, but because a piece of 1955 marginalia grew into a legend that refuses to die. The annotated book is real. The margins are filled with visions of green fog and screaming sailors. The letters exist in archives. What they describe may be pure invention, but the fact that they were written at all is a strange and stubborn fact. The investigation, after all these years, still asks the same question. If it never happened, why does it feel like it did? Perhaps the Philadelphia experiment was never about a vanishing ship. Perhaps it was about a story that, once told, could never be made to disappear.